everyone, I'm Anthropomantic Fiend, and I do metal-related things on the internet today. Usually it's horror things, but I'm also a huge metalhead if you know anything about me, so I'm gonna be doing what I think will be a quick album review, because I just want to do this really quickly, just give you my thoughts on the album and highly recommend it to you because I thought it was really good. But it's also by my favorite band, and I tend to gush about them and be very wordy and long-winded about everything, so I'm going to try to do this relatively quickly, especially since a lot of people have gone a lot more in depth with it. And I honestly think, rather than just listening to me talk about it, you should probably just listen to the album. But I wanted to just give you my quick thoughts on it, because new album by my favorite band doesn't happen that often. There are often very long breaks between their releasing of albums. I'm gonna give you my little review on this album, and if you've read the title of the video, you know that it is Human Nature, the new album from Nightwish. They are a symphonic metal band from Finland, and my favorite band. Just some quick trivia on this album. Previous to this, we've had some very sort of mixed themes throughout their different albums. A lot of fantasy themes, but also themes of realism and nature. A lot of their earlier albums were a lot more personal to Tuomas Holopainen, the keyboardist and main composer, and his experiences, and were a lot more fantasy oriented as well. With the album Imaginarum, which might be my favorite album from them, they really explored sort of just how many different directions you could go with that, and sort of exploring the different bounds of the imagination. They really sort of explored these different flights of fancy. One of the songs was sort of a creepy circus thing, another one was like Twin Peaks inspired jazz metal, and they just went all across the board with it. But the album following that was In the Swarm's Most Beautiful, which went away from that more personal approach and decided to explore the nature of the outside world, of science. And that also sort of is in the running for my favorite album from them. It explores themes from Darwin and scientists like Carl Sagan and Richard Dawkins, who actually does some narration on the album. This album goes back inward, but in a different way. It is, rather than exploring nature, or the imagination, human nature in general, with some other sort of little natural science and fantasy elements along the way, which comes with the territory of being a Nightwish album. There are 3 singers in the band. There's Flora Jansen, who has been their 3rd lead singer. They had 2 before. She's probably my favorite. But then there's also the bassist Marco Hietala, who has a very sort of powerful power metal sort of voice, and Troy Donackley, who plays a lot of folk instruments with the band, and he has a very sort of different, it's not a metal voice, but it's a very, very nice voice. On every chorus on this album, they are doing 3-part harmonies, and it's very beautiful. They just made the conscious decision that on every song, no matter who was doing the main lead vocals on that track, there would be a 3-part harmony in every chorus. This is divided up into 2 discs. The first is the first 9 songs, and the last one is the 10th song, All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the World, which is about 30 minutes long and pretty much almost totally instrumental and orchestral. On previous albums, they are a symphonic metal band, so they've employed an orchestra backing them up on every song. On this album, on disc 1, it's just the bands, and anything symphonic you hear is Tuomas's keyboards, and they brought the choir in, but not the orchestra. They left the orchestra for just disc 2 and All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the World, which is just a huge orchestral piece. Here are my thoughts. So, track 1 is Music. This song is about literally sort of the birth of music coming into the world. That's basically the whole gist of it, just the gradual formation of music as a being, and almost, I think Tuomas described it as like music sort of descending on the world like some kind of alien being or something. This one doesn't really have like a really sort of distinctive thing about it. It's just a really solid song. It's very catchy. I like the chorus, and it tells the story of music, which I love. The second track is Noise. In contrast to music, this was the first single off the album and probably the most popular song off the album. Definitely one of my favorites. This song really sort of goes after social media in a lot of ways and sort of talks about the toxic, egotistical aspects of that and the way we sort of get lost in trying to feed our ego and perpetuate a perfect image of ourselves there that doesn't exist, and we don't even think to look at the world around us and explore that and make something of that. It's a really, really good song. The video for it is fantastic as well. All of the band members sort of star as different toxic elements of social media, and it has sort of a Matrix element, and there are also references to the Black Mirror TV show in it. It's awesome. It's very dark, and there's a lot of social commentary, and it's a very heavy song. It has an awesome breakdown in the middle of it. I cannot praise the song Noise enough. One of my favorites off of the album. Following that, we have the song Shoemaker, which is about Eugene Shoemaker. I believe he was a scientist. I don't recall all of what he did, but he made a lot of progress in the fields of the exploration of space. And when he died, I believe they actually sent some of his ashes into space. They use sort of a quote from Romeo and Juliet. I don't recall the whole thing. I'm not going to read it for you, but they use it in the song.
And when he shall die, take him and cut him out in little stars, and he will make the face of heaven so fine that all the world will be in love with the night and pay no worship to the garish sun.
They actually recite it. It's recited by, I think, Joanna Kirkella, who is Tuomas's wife and the lead singer for his other band, Auri. She is awesome. It's a really beautiful song. It's got sort of just a traditional, cool, symphonic metal vibe through the most of it, with sort of a little off-kilter progressive rhythm. But then at the very end of the song, it goes very orchestral and choral, and Flor uses her full operatic voice, and it just becomes this huge, beautiful operatic piece. I can't really describe it in any other way. It's really, really beautiful, and I think it's an amazing tribute to Eugene Shoemaker, even though I don't actually know that much about him. After this, we have Harvest, which is the second single off of the album, and it is distinctive because Troy Donockley actually takes lead vocals on this song, which is something he has never done before. This song has this very sort of upbeat, major key, happy feeling, and saying sort of join the harvest, dance some more, but it is about sort of death and almost like dancing and laughing in the face of death, but also that death is inevitable. So it's actually a somewhat dark song, but it is really good, and the middle section of the song goes full-on folk metal, and it is so very upbeat and fun, and I absolutely love it. You get to hear a lot of Troy's pipe playing, and it's just awesome. After this, we have Pan. I wasn't quite sure what the exact theme of this, but I believe it's more just about the general idea of storytelling as something that humans do. This song is definitely one of the heavier tracks on the album. There's an awesome section which is this sort of crazy melodic part that the choir is doing in the background, and all the instruments are following it, and they've repeated a ton of times. You just have to hear it. It's really, really cool, but it's a very heavy, and it's very much, I don't know how to characterize it exactly, but it's a heavier track, and it's really just sort of quintessential Nightwishy symphonic metal. After this, we have How's the Heart, which is definitely sort of the sweetest, tenderest song on the album, I don't know, actually. Nightwish does Sweet and Tender very well. Shoemaker is, but in a different way. This one is very sort of more general and touches on just like a universal human thing. It is really just about people who are struggling and sort of checking in with them and asking, how's the heart? This one brings sort of the folk metal element back into it, and it's just a really good feeling song. It's heavy, but it's not sort of dark and angry and heavy the way Noise is. This is more like Elan off of In the Storm's Most Beautiful, in that it feels good, and the lyrics really do sort of affirm that. And this also ends with all the instruments dropping out and just a repetition of the chorus with the 3-part harmony, and it's really, really nice. After this we have Procession, which for me was probably the weakest track on the album. It wasn't bad, but it's not as memorable, probably because of the interesting choice not to have a chorus, just sort of repeating verses, which does sort of create this repetitive processional feel, but it didn't really connect with me the way the other songs did, and it did feel like it was touching on themes that Nightwish has touched on a million times before already. It's generally kind of about like the evolution of animals as well as humankind, which was a lot of what Endless Form's Most Beautiful as an album was about, and I think The Greatest Show on Earth did it in a much better way, but this was still a good song. After this we have Tribal, which is another one of my favorite songs on the album, definitely heavier. This one seems to be talking more about the way that people sort of create their own tribes. There's this very sort of community, either you're in or you're out sort of mentality, and sort of a do what everyone else is doing sort of thing. That's at least my surface level interpretation, but it's also tribal in the sense that it's a very sort of percussive song. It's got this section in the middle where it's basically a breakdown, but it's just this very syncopated, heavy section with, I think, Marco and Troy just doing this little grunting thing over it. It is one of my favorite things on the album. And then for the video, for this section, for the lyric video, they put in these dancing skeletons, which completely cracked me up. You have to see it. It was just awesome when I heard it the first time, and then when they put the dancing skeletons in, I died. It was too funny. And then track 9 is Endlessness. On this one, Marco gets the lead vocals, and it has this very big, epic metal feel, because this one is just sort of about the general sort of endlessness of the cosmos, and the sort of it's sort of existential and awe-inspiring in its feel. This is probably sort of the second least memorable for me, but it's still a really good song, and it's just sort of a kind of a solid mid-tempo epic symphonic metal song. Not as distinctive as some of the other songs, but really, really good. And then on disc 2, we've got All the Works of Nature Which Adorn the World, which is 30 minutes long and purely orchestral. It is really beautiful. They've split it up into 8 different parts, but it really does work best just as one long piece, just listened to in one sitting. And it's very beautiful. They open it with a quote from Oscar Wilde and end it with, I think, a quote from Carl Sagan, both performed by Joanna Kirkela, again, Tuomas's wife and the lead singer for Auri. And that is probably my issue with this song, is it's beautiful, but it's really just kind of Tuomas showing off his composing. It feels like something off of one of his Auri albums or off of his Life and Times of Scrooge album, and not a Nightwish song. Floor does kind of some melodic vocal lines on it, and Troy is there, but it's really just kind of the orchestra and Tuomas's keyboards and compositions. So it doesn't really feel like a band piece per se, but it is still really, really good and worth a listen. So that is my review of Human Nature. Is it my favorite Nightwish album? I'm not sure. I think Imaginarum and Endless Form's Most Beautiful still beat it out for that title, but it is one of the best albums that has come out this year, and definitely worth a listen from basically everybody, metalhead or otherwise. That's my review. Thank you for watching my video, and hopefully I will see you in another one. Bye.
Underneath the silence, how's the common paean. Come in the fire's warm, burn the rope and dance some more.